Okay, so building on chapter 2, we're now moving on to chapter 3, perception and communication. So our main chapter topics that we'll discuss today in this video are the process of human perception, influences on perception, social media and perception, as well as guidelines for improving perception and communication. So when we think about the process of human perception, we want to keep a couple of things in mind. So perception is defined as the active process of creating meaning by selecting, organizing, and interpreting people, objects, events, situations, and other phenomena. So there are three interactive processes involved here. So the first is selecting, or the process of selection. The second is organizing, or the process of organization. And the third is interpreting, or the process of interpretation. So when you look at this image, I want you to take some time and let me know what you see. So take a few seconds and try to figure out what it is that you see. Some people see the face of a woman, while other people see what looks like to be a gnome with a pretty big nose who is either playing a saxophone or smoking a pretty big pipe. So when we think about perception, it's important for us to consider that we all perceive different types of things, which aren't necessarily right or wrong, but are oftentimes somewhere in the middle. When we think about selection, we want to consider that all types of phenomena influence what and who we communicate with. So then selection is impacted by our self-concept, which we talked about in chapter 2, how we see ourselves, how we view ourselves, our internal noise, so those things that we hear on the inside. So for me, one of the songs that I always hear and play in my head is Bad and Bougie by Migos. I don't know why. I don't necessarily like the song, but it plays in my head often, so it offers internal noise. Another form of internal noise could be if you have a headache, if you're hungry, if you're thinking about what you need to do as soon as you leave class. External noises would obviously be those things that exist externally. So a version of an external noise could be if a fire alarm goes off, or if you're sitting in class and a fire truck goes by or rolls by. Another external noise could be the tapping. If you have a classmate or you yourself are tapping on your desk as you take a test. So all of these things impact the way that we view and we perceive different phenomena in the world. So we think about perception and culture. I think it's really important for us to focus on these ideas of cultural values. So cultural values then impact how we perceive and communicate in the world. So categories such as gender, subculture, economic class, age, race, ethnicity, these all influence one's perception. So these influence where we enter into the conversation as well as where other people enter into the conversation. So if anybody's seen Eddie Murphy's Coming to America, which is also said to be rebooted soon, which also features Arsenio Hall, I think that this is a great example of how perception and culture intertwine and what happens when groups of people don't understand each other based on gender, race, culture, ethnicity, and class, and all of the confusion that is created from that. And if you want to check out a specific clip, I've had it in our folder for chapter 3. So when we think about this idea of organization, we want to recognize the theory of constructivism. And constructivism focuses on our use of schemata or schema, which allow us to make sense of the world in 4 primary ways. So the 4 schemata that we'll focus on today are prototypes, personal constructs, stereotypes or implicit bias, and scripts. And so if you remember from chapter 2, we reviewed some of these, especially when we're thinking about life scripts, our stereotypes, our personal constructs, okay, and then prototypes. And we'll dig into these a bit more. So cognitive schemata, so when we're thinking about a visual example of this, a prototype is usually defined as the exemplar of a category. Okay, one of my favorite rappers, Andre 3000 or Andre 3 Stacks from the group Outkast, created this song called The Prototype. And what he was discussing in the song was how this woman that he met was the prototype to him. She was the perfect everything. And so she was the exemplar in a category of other women, and he figured that she was the best one. If you haven't heard this song, it's a great song. If you haven't seen the video, wonderful video, you should go and check it out. When we're thinking about personal constructs, this is a bipolar or a multi-dimensional way in which we assess people based on a yardstick. So while I don't necessarily like the use of the term bipolar because that could be triggering, I think it is an important way to describe how we view people and how we view situations from one extreme to the next, okay? So these are confident or not confident, moody or not moody, attractive or unattractive, right? So we have these opposites that exist. Stereotype is a predictive generalization based on how we perceive the group into which we place people. So an example that this image uses is that wealthy people are conservative, attractive women are conceited. We know that there exist people who don't fit into these categories at all, but they may be stereotyped to be viewed that way. And oftentimes when we think about stereotypes, it's important to recognize that a lot of our stereotypes are based on people's experiences with one person, and they then consider the group of people who seem to be like that person as being monolithic and representing that stereotype. And so we want to be mindful that within the context of this conversation that we understand that stereotypes impact the way that we perceive others' communication, but that we stay far away from stereotyping people and actually work against those ideas. And then a script is our guide to action in a specific situation. So this is where we may engage in small talk with clerks. So thinking back to what we just talked about in chapter 2 about face theory and how Goffman talks about our dramaturgical stance with our front stage being who we are when we talk to Professor Barry McCrae versus who we are when we talk to our mom and dad, or who we are when we talk to our friends, or even who we are when we talk online. All of those versions of ourselves are a little bit different. And so we have a script as to how to make sense of the world and how to communicate in that way. Interpretation, then, when we consider this, it is defined as a subjective process of organizing and making sense of perceptions. So we are all interested in figuring out why things happen, right? So you ever hear kids who ask, well, why? Well, why? Why does this happen? Why do we have to do this? Why do I have to pick up my toys? Why do I have to clean up? Why do I have to go to bed now? Okay? It's because we want to understand what's going on, because we want to make sense of the world. And especially for children, they're little sense-making souls. So they're always trying to figure out what's going on because they don't understand it. They don't always have the wisdom, obviously, to understand some of the things that they're being told to do or why experiences or situations occur in the way that they do. And so when we think about interpretation, this occurs via attribution. So attribution is an explanation of why things happen and why people act as they do. Not necessarily correct interpretations of others and their motives, but ways that we kind of explain away what a person does, or we try to make sense of what a person does based on our perception, obviously, but also based on a pattern of communication. So when we think about a self-serving bias, a self-serving bias is something that we consider when we say, like, oh, well, I didn't do really well on that test because the professor actually is not a good professor. It's not that I didn't study, or I waited until the last minute to study, or I didn't prepare, or I didn't have the books. It's that the professor is bad, okay? So that's a bias that serves us because it makes us look better. And so we can think about a variety of situations where we utilize that. Fundamental attribution error is where we make sense of the world through saying, again, like, this is someone else's issue. This is something else that causes this person to act this way. So if you have a friend and that person is being moody, you could say, oh, that person is being moody because they're conceited, or the person is being moody because they're a bad person, or they're always moody, right? Or the person could be moody because they didn't get enough sleep, or they could be moody because they have some personal situations going on. So we think about attribution. It's important for us to understand the different types and ways that attribution can be assigned to different people's situations and to phenomena that we observe in the communicative space. One example of attribution currently is in looking at the NFL and their policy or their ban to require players to stand for the anthem if on the field. So I want you to think, How are self-serving bias and fundamental attribution error represented here? And then what impacts the NFL's intentions? So does the NFL stand from a position of self-serving bias or from fundamental attribution error? Or could they actually be doing something that is actually right and people just disagree with it by mighty forces? So when we think about influences on perception, we also want to acknowledge the following. So the first thing we want to acknowledge is our physiology, okay? So how do our bodies work? How do our minds work? What goes into the way that we operate within the world physically, okay? Our expectations. What expectations do we have of people? Do we have expectations that are set too high? Do we have expectations that are unrealistic? And then what expectations do people have of us? How do people perceive us, and what do they place onto us and in our lives? And what do they expect us to perform? Our age, okay? Our culture. And this also aligns with this idea of our social location. So where are we in the world? Our culture as a part of the student culture, right? At Towson University, or our culture as a part of the faculty culture at Towson University, but then our positionalities. So, I'm a faculty member, but I'm also a faculty member of color, and I'm also a young faculty member of color. So my positionality is going to be different than that of a person who may come from a more well-represented space in the academy. So my positionality is going to be a lot different from my colleagues who are white men who are older and who have worked at Towson longer. Cognitive ability. So this is how we think about processes. How complexly are we able to think? Are we able to make sense of the world? And how person-centered are we? So do we focus more on other people? Are we thoughtful enough to consider other people's experiences? Or do we only look at the world through how we see the world and then make sense of the world only through those lenses? And then finally, our self. We keep returning back to this idea of self, and I would say that self is probably a core theme or a sub-theme of interpersonal communication. So we want to always acknowledge that our self plays a role in the ways that we look at the world, and I cannot stress that enough. So also we want to consider social media and perception. So, how do you respond if you text someone and they don't text you back? Especially if you have an iPhone and they have their read reports on, right? Are you in your feelings about that? Or are you like, oh, well, like it's a text message. They may or may not text back and I'm okay with that. What about texts that come at certain times of the night? So let's think about hookup culture, right? Let's think about when you get a text that says you up. What does that mean? It's different if you get a you up text at 8 a.m. versus a you up text at 4 a.m. Our president, Donald Trump, has sent out tweets. We know that he's popular for tweeting. So this tweet in particular, he says on September 11th, what do you think people perceive from that? What do you perceive from that? Could there be multiple ideas, multiple understandings that come from that? Or do we all understand the same thing? And then finally, our guidelines for improving perception and communication. We want to recognize that all perceptions are partial and subjective. We want to avoid mind reading. And it's so easy to do it, right? Because we know what we expect and what we experience and what we think, but we cannot place that upon other people. We want to check our perceptions with others. So we don't want to make assumptions. We want to make sure we ask questions and that we ask genuine and thoughtful and respectful questions of others to get a full view of where they're coming from. We want to distinguish between facts and inferences, okay? We want to make sure that we know what the difference is between a fact and what the difference is between a fake, or what the difference is between a fact and an opinion. We want to guard against the self-serving bias as much as possible, right? Because similar to this idea of implicit bias, self-serving bias creeps in based on our lived experiences. And then we also want to guard against the fundamental attribution error, okay? And then finally, we want to monitor labels. And so I think this definitely connects to this idea of recognizing otherness and recognizing different people's positionalities and being thoughtful about how we look at people and how we may stereotype them or generalize them or put them into monolithic groups where we say like, oh, well, you look like this, so you're probably this type of person, without getting to know them and assigning ideas or traits to that person once we get to know them. So this completes our presentation or our video for chapter 3, make sure you go back to the chapter 3 folder and look at the video that I